Welcome to the verse-by-verse study of the book of Proverbs. We'll cover chapter 4 today. Chapter 4 is a beautiful summary of the first 3 chapters of the book. Recall this book opens with an elder sharing wisdom with a youth, which is portrayed as King Solomon sharing his wisdom with his sons, which of course gives us a model of a parent sharing God's wisdom with their children. The chapter provides this wise counsel and also reflects the love that should motivate this wisdom. Let's take a look, beginning in verse 1. Listen, my sons, to a father's instruction. Pay attention and gain understanding. I give you sound learning. For do not forsake my teaching. For I too was a son to my father, which of course King Solomon's father was King David, still tender and cherished by my mother. So we have instruction, understanding, learning, and teaching, all describing God's wisdom, which of course is the application of knowledge. Wisdom is God's guidelines for making wise decisions that lead to a life of blessings. Sound learning means that this wisdom has been tested and proven both true and valuable. Let's continue to listen in. Then he, meaning my father, taught me, and he said to me, take hold of my words, my wisdom, with all your heart. Keep my commands, and you will live. Get wisdom, get understanding, and do not forget my words or turn away from them. We see that God's wisdom is meant to be passed down from one generation to the next, because God's wisdom is timeless. Its truth and its effectiveness does not change. We also hear this from this father, this sense of urgency, this sense of importance. He's encouraging the youth to take hold of with all his heart or her heart and not to turn away. And he explains why in the next verse. Do not forsake wisdom, and she, wisdom, will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. The verse is telling us there's really only 2 options: to forsake or to love. To forsake someone, of course, means to abandon, to dismiss, to disregard, as opposed to love, which means to remain committed, supportive. This promise is that if we remain loyal to God's wisdom, she will be loyal to us. She will be steadfast, protective, and a wise lifetime partner. Let's take a look at verse 7. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it cost all you have, get understanding. The key word here is get. It means to pursue, to place God's wisdom as our first priority. Wisdom begins when you and I honor and trust God by applying his wisdom in our day-to-day decisions. And if we do that, there's this promise, as begins in verse 8. Cherish her, and she will exalt you. Embrace her, and she will honor you. She will give you a garland to grace your head and present you with a glorious crown. Listen, my son, accept what I say, and the years of your life will be many. The promise here, if we choose to follow God's wisdom, we will be rewarded with both a well-deserved reputation of integrity as well as an abundant life. This beautiful promise continues beginning in verse 11. I instruct you in the way of wisdom and lead you along straight paths. When you walk, your steps will not be hampered, and when you run, you will not stumble. Here the author uses a pathway as a metaphor for life. It is our choice to either choose the crooked, dark pathway that's full of painful potholes as we wander in that darkness, or we can follow God's straight, lighted pathway that avoids the pain and needless stumbling and it leads to a life of peace, purpose, and blessings. The author continues with the same theme in the next verse. Hold on to instruction, to wisdom. Do not let it go. Guard it well, for it is your life. Do not set foot on the path of the wicked or walk in the ways of the evildoers. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn from it and go on your way. For they cannot rest until they do evil. They are robbed of sleep till they make someone stumble. They eat the bread and wickedness and drink the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever bright till the full light of day. But the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. Recall, this wisdom was written over 3,000 years ago, a time when there were no street lights, no flashlights, no automobile headlights. There was real danger in attempting to walk a path in the deep darkness. The wiser decision was to wait till early morning and securely walk in God's light, which was a light that dispels at morning dawn, dispels the darkness. And it gets progressively brighter as we walk along the path, hand in hand with God. The author continues with a passionate plea beginning in verse 20. My son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ear to my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and health to the one's whole body. God's wisdom is to be kept, to be stored within our hearts, which drives our behavior and impacts our health, physical, emotional, and of course spiritual. His wisdom nourishes the soul. Numerous studies reflect that Christians do indeed live longer. But his wisdom not only adds to the quantity of life, but more importantly to the quality of life. Now the author will give us a familiar verse. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it, the heart. You know, the heart is an amazing organ. The average heart only weighs around 11 ounces, but it beats over 100,000 times per day, pumping 2,000 gallons of life-sustaining blood every day through 60,000 miles of connected blood vessels in our bodies. But here, this heart represents something even more amazing. It represents where we store wisdom, and also that heart is the source of our motivation. So we're told to guard it, which means to be diligent in carefully not allowing sin to take root and pollute our hearts. Christ said, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see, meaning experience, God. You know, when our hearts become full of anger, hate, lust, pride, unforgiveness, envy, we become disconnected from God and disconnected from his wisdom. And if that happens, our heart needs to be purified. And how do we do that? By sincerely confessing our sinful thoughts and actions and replacing those with God's wisdom. As stated here in Philippians, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, if there's anything excellent or praiseworthy, think, reflect, set your heart on those things. Choose those things. Each day, you and I have a choice to what we put inside our hearts and our heads, and therefore what flows from it, because what we put in it is what comes out, either negative or positive. We also have a choice of what flows from our mouth, as we see in the next verse. Keep your mouth free of perversity. Keep corrupt talk far from your lips. Perversity and corrupt means to be deceitful, devious, dishonest, to speak without integrity. Proverbs throughout this book dedicates 25 verses on how to control, how to manage our tongues. Our words again reflect our heart. We're also told in the next verse to manage, to control our eyes. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. The eyes very often are a gateway into our heart. If we have eyes that choose to only focus on darkness, as noted here in the book of Matthew, then our heart and our whole body becomes dark. But if we choose God's light, we reflect his light. This chapter closes with, give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Keep your foot from evil. So the author closes with a plea to this youth to choose God's path in life and diligently stay the course. Not to the left, not to the right. That closes chapter 4. Next week we'll pick it up in chapter 5. Until then, may God bless you and your family with grace and peace. Aloha.